The laughter hit her like a slap. Naomi Carter stood at the edge of the room, her tray still in hand, as a roar of amusement echoed off the marble walls of the penthouse conference lounge. The view behind them, Lake Michigan glittering under the city lights, was stunning, but all eyes were on the CEO at the center of the room. Logan Whitaker. 6'3", crisp navy suit, net worth north of $200 million. And tonight, apparently, he was also a stand-up comedian. He held up a dense stack of stapled documents written entirely in Korean. "All right, folks," he said, grinning as he waved it around. "Our new South Korean partners sent this over just this morning. It's a technical contract. High-level stuff. Even our legal team needed a translator." He turned to Naomi and raised a brow. "Tell you what, Naomi, if you can translate this by tomorrow morning, I'll give you my monthly salary." The room broke into another round of laughter. One exec nearly spit out his bourbon. "That's 500 grand, Logan added, chuckling. "Bet that's more than you've made in 10 years. Naomi said nothing. Her face remained calm, her eyes steady. She stepped forward, took the document with a graceful nod, and responded in the same voice she used when asking guests if they needed more wine. "Will that be all, sir?" Logan waved her off like a magician dismissing his assistant. "Yes, yes. Just don't forget to restock the bar." No one saw her fingers tremble slightly as she left the room. But they weren't trembling from fear. They never did. Naomi Carter didn't come to this country to be underestimated. What Logan and the entire boardroom didn't know, what none of them had ever bothered to ask, is that Naomi once held a doctorate in comparative linguistics. She'd published papers in 4 languages. She'd lectured in Seoul. She'd fled for her life. Tonight, she was done playing small. And this time, her silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. Because she was about to remind a billionaire that knowledge, not power, is the ultimate currency. And she would do it. One translated word at a time. Naomi Carter was the kind of woman most people overlooked, by design. She moved through spaces with quiet confidence, the way someone does when they know how to command a room without needing to speak. 5'8", fit, poised, with warm brown skin and expressive eyes that rarely gave anything away unless she wanted them to. Her natural curls were always pulled into a clean, practical bun. No makeup, no jewelry, just the simple uniform of the household staff, black slacks, a crisp white blouse, and an apron she folded perfectly before every shift. To the people who passed her in hallways and gave absent-minded thank yous as she topped off their wine, Naomi was just the help. But if they had ever paid attention, really paid attention, they might have caught the way she watched everything. Every deal, every conversation, every slip of arrogance. For the past 8 years, Naomi had worked in the private service of Logan Whitaker, founder and CEO of the pharmaceutical giant Medtronics. She cooked his meals, cleaned his home, organized his wardrobe, and made sure his 3 Rhodesian Ridgebacks were walked on schedule. What no one in the company, or even Logan himself, knew was that Naomi Carter held a PhD in linguistics and cultural semantics. Before coming to the U.S., she had been a tenured professor at one of South Korea's top universities. She spoke 6 languages fluently and could read and write in 3 more. Her doctoral work was cited in international policy reports. Her lectures had filled halls from Seoul to Singapore. All of that ended in a single week, when political unrest swept her adopted homeland. She barely made it out. Her passport, her degrees, her publications, left behind. Rebuilding a professional life in the United States would have required years of bureaucratic backtracking, exams, and expensive legal verification. But Naomi didn't have years. She had a sister back home to support, a nephew with diabetes, a mother whose heart medication wasn't covered by any affordable plan. So she chose the one thing America still respected in silence: labor. And for 8 years, Naomi gave her labor generously, efficiently, invisibly, until the moment someone put a challenge in her hands worth rising to, and made the fatal mistake of thinking she wouldn't. Logan Whitaker didn't believe in small wins. To him, everything was a power play. That night's gathering in his penthouse wasn't just a celebration, it was a victory lap. Medtronics had just secured a $3.2 billion strategic partnership with a South Korean biotech firm known for its cutting-edge work in nanomedicine. The deal was set to propel the company ahead of its competitors by at least 5 years in pharmaceutical innovation. But there was a catch. The final terms had arrived from Seoul earlier that afternoon. A dense, 60-page technical agreement entirely in Korean. It contained clauses layered in legalese, engineering terminology, and scientific references that their in-house translators were still struggling to parse. Logan, of course, wasn't worried. Details were for lawyers. Still, he saw the document as an opportunity. Not for insight, but for spectacle. When Naomi quietly approached to refill his whiskey, he turned with a smirk and waved the contract in the air like a magician revealing the final trick. "This right here," he said loudly to the room, "is why you always hire the best attorneys." The execs chuckled, swirling their drinks. Then came the challenge. "But let's have some fun." "Naomi," he said, beckoning her forward, "if you can translate this entire document by tomorrow morning, I'll give you my monthly salary." He didn't expect a response. He expected a laugh, a polite refusal, maybe even a nervous look. But Naomi's expression didn't change. He doubled down. "That's $500,000. I'll even write the check myself. Just bring me the translation before sunrise." Diane, the CFO, gave him a look. "Logan, don't tease the staff." But Logan only raised his glass. "I'm not teasing. I'm serious. Come on, what's life without a little pressure?" Naomi took the document without a word. Not because she was intimidated, but because she had no interest in defending herself to men who only valued noise. She didn't need to prove anything in that moment. She would let the work do that for her. Because while they laughed at a joke they thought would die on the floor, Naomi Carter already knew the punchline. And she planned to deliver it, line by line, clause by clause, before the sun came up. Naomi didn't flinch. She walked out of the penthouse the way she had walked in, shoulders straight, eyes forward, quiet as breath. The elevator ride down 72 floors felt longer than usual. Not because of nerves, but because her mind was already spinning. Calculating. Translating. Recalling. She could still hear the laughter from the boardroom echoing behind her, but she boxed it away, tucked it in the same place she kept 1,000 other slights that had come before. She didn't need anger right now. She needed clarity. Outside, Chicago's night air was crisp, cutting through her uniform like a blade. She pulled her coat tighter around her and hurried to her car. A silver 2010 Honda Civic with a cracked taillight and over 180,000 miles on it. Reliable. Unassuming. Just like her. Once home, Naomi moved with precision. Shoes off. Hair down. Tea kettle on. She placed the document on her dining table, a small square of oak that doubled as her work desk. She took a photo of the first page with her phone and opened her encrypted email. To Daniel Cho at berkeley.edu. Subject: Urgent. Document assistance needed. Message: Daniel, I know it's late. I have a contract written in complex Korean legal and technical jargon. Could use your eyes on a few terms. We'll send sections shortly. Hope all is well. Naomi. She hit send, then opened her laptop. The old screen flickered to life. Word processing software loaded. Files organized. She opened a blank document and began typing. The words didn't come quickly. Not at first. Her Korean was rusty, especially with biotech-specific terminology. But like riding a bike on a familiar street, the rhythm came back. Paragraph by paragraph, the meanings unfolded. Words became sentences. Sentences revealed intentions. And somewhere around page 12, Naomi stopped typing. She stared at one clause, then another. And then she realized what no one in that penthouse had seen. This wasn't just a contract. It was a trap. There were terms buried deep in the technical language that, if signed without revision, would give the South Korean partner unfettered access to Metatronics's proprietary algorithms and data infrastructure. Another clause would shift patent ownership of any jointly developed tech to a shadow subsidiary overseas. Naomi's chest tightened, not in fear, but in focus. By now, the laughter at the penthouse had faded into the silence of late-night celebration. But Naomi wasn't celebrating. She was building a firewall, one sentence at a time. And by sunrise, she would be the only thing standing between $1 billion company and its undoing. Naomi arrived back at the Whitaker penthouse just before 7 a.m. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale gold over the skyline. The city was yawning awake, but Naomi? She hadn't slept. Not even for a minute. Her eyes were alert, focused. She wore the same uniform from the night before, freshly pressed, and her hair was tied back with precision. In one hand, she carried a plain black folder. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Just paper. Words. But those words could shatter empires. Inside the penthouse, the remains of celebration clung to the air. Half-empty glasses, the smell of whiskey, quiet jazz still looping from the smart speakers. The board members were stirring, nursing hangovers with espresso and regrets. Logan Whitaker was already at the breakfast counter, scrolling his phone with a glazed expression. When Naomi entered, he didn't look up at first. "You can leave that paper on my desk," he said lazily, clearly expecting a blank page or maybe a sheepish apology. Instead, she stepped forward and set the folder directly in front of him. "I completed the translation, sir." He blinked, looked up. "Excuse me." Naomi repeated it calmly. "I translated the entire contract, and annotated the sections I believe require legal review." Now she had everyone's attention. Logan opened the folder, flipping quickly through the neatly printed pages. His smirk faded almost instantly. He slowed down, then stopped, then reread the same paragraph 3 times. What is this?" he muttered, tapping one of the highlighted lines. "That clause," Naomi said, her voice steady, "grants the Korean subsidiary full access to Metatronics' security protocols. If signed as written, it would allow them to bypass all internal firewalls and access sensitive research databases." A stunned silence fell over the room. Naomi flipped to the next tabbed section. This one effectively transfers joint ownership of any new nanotech developments to a holding company based in Busan. Your legal team might not recognize it at first glance. The wording is deliberately vague. Diane, the CFO, snatched the folder, reading frantically. Her face paled. "She's right," she whispered. "How did we miss this?" Logan looked up, speechless. Naomi met his gaze, calm and unshaken. "I believe you promised $500,000 if I delivered it by this morning." The room remained silent, not out of disbelief, but out of realization that the quiet woman they all thought they knew had just saved them from the brink. The silence in the penthouse was unlike any Naomi had ever experienced. Not the polite, dismissive silence of being ignored. Not the careless quiet of being unseen. This silence was loaded, dense. It carried the weight of realization and the sting of embarrassment. Logan Whitaker stood frozen, one hand still resting on the folder Naomi had handed him. His other hand, which had been gripping a mug of black coffee, now trembled slightly. He looked like a man realizing the floor beneath him wasn't solid anymore. "Jesus," he whispered. Diane flipped through the contract, page by page, her fingers moving with urgency. Her brows furrowed deeper with each highlighted section Naomi had flagged. The other board members gathered behind her, reading over her shoulder. No one dared to speak. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to full-blown panic. "This is," Diane finally spoke, her voice low, "this is a structural breach waiting to happen. If we had signed this, we'd be handing over our core research to an overseas entity with zero liability protections." Logan ran a hand through his hair, the bravado from the night before draining from his face like a man sobering up from a dream. "How the hell did this get past our legal team?" Naomi answered before anyone else could. "Because the language is disguised in technical and cultural nuance. It's not just about translation. It's about understanding what's not being said. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional." Diane nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on the document. "This would have buried us." No one laughed now. No smug glances. No clinking glasses. They all looked at Naomi the way a crew looks at the lighthouse after realizing they were sailing straight toward rocks. "How did you?" Logan finally asked, voice quieter than Naomi had ever heard it. "Where did you learn to read this level of detail?" Naomi didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply said, "I used to teach this." There it was. A truth laid bare in the middle of a boardroom full of people who'd once thought of her as invisible. a truth that shook the air more than the numbers on any contract ever could. And in that moment, Naomi Carter wasn't just the woman who saved their company. She was the storm they never saw coming. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. Then Diane, still gripping the document as if it might disappear, turned to Naomi with eyes wide. "You used to teach this?" she asked, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Naomi nodded once. Composed. As if she were simply confirming what time breakfast would be served. "I was a professor of linguistics and cross-cultural communication," she said evenly, specializing in legal and technical translation between English, Korean, and Mandarin. Logan leaned against the countertop, rubbing the back of his neck like a man trying to piece together a story that no longer made sense. "Where?" he asked quietly. "Seoul National University." That got a reaction. Even the junior executive near the window turned to stare. Seoul National was top-tier, globally ranked, prestigious, competitive. The kind of institution that didn't just hand out titles. "I spent 9 years there," Naomi continued. "Taught full-time, published, led joint research projects with tech firms across Asia." "So, what happened?" Logan asked, more gently now. Naomi's eyes flickered. Not with pain, but with memory. She chose her words carefully. When the administration changed, certain academics were pressured. There were rumors about ties to foreign entities, and suspicion didn't need evidence. She paused. "I left before they could make an example of me." The room was still. No one dared interrupt. "I landed here in Chicago with nothing. My credentials didn't transfer. Reapplying meant time and money I didn't have. My mother was ill. My nephew's insulin cost more than rent." Naomi looked directly at Logan now, not with bitterness, but with undeniable clarity. "I needed work. Your first assistant was kind. She hired me without questions. I've been here ever since." There was no self-pity in her tone. No anger. Just the kind of steady, unshakable truth that doesn't ask for sympathy. Only recognition. Diane was the first to speak again. "We've had a global expert in international compliance, managing the linen inventory." Naomi said nothing. Logan straightened up, the weight of what he'd just learned settling into his bones. For 8 years, the most brilliant mind in the room had walked past him unnoticed. Not because she was invisible, but because no one had ever cared to look. Until now. The boardroom slowly emptied, but Naomi stayed. She didn't need to be told. Logan had asked everyone else to leave, his voice low, almost reverent. Diane was the last to go, glancing at Naomi with something that looked a lot like respect before closing the glass door behind her. Now it was just the two of them, the CEO and the housekeeper, the billionaire and the woman who just saved his company. Logan stood for a long moment, arms crossed, staring out at the skyline. His voice, when it came, didn't carry the same sharp edge it usually did. "I don't know how to start this conversation," he admitted. Naomi, still standing near the marble counter, replied simply, "You just did." He turned to her, ran a hand over his face. "I owe you an apology, Naomi. A real one." She didn't nod, didn't rush to accept it. "I've made assumptions," he continued, "about you, about what people are capable of based on what they do, or what they wear, or how quietly they move through a room." He paused. "I've spent years in this home, around you, and never once asked where you came from, what you wanted, what you were capable of." Naomi finally spoke. "You didn't need to." That landed hard. Logan leaned back against the table, his tone stripped of performance. "Why didn't you say anything? About your past, your skills?" She met his eyes. "Would it have mattered if I had?" The silence that followed was heavy. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. "I guess that's the part one have to live with," Logan said. Naomi stepped forward, folding her hands calmly. "I didn't stay silent out of shame. I stayed silent because survival sometimes demands invisibility. But don't mistake that for absence." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I've got a lot to think about." Naomi gave a small nod, then added softly, "Everyone in this building has a story. I'm just the one you finally noticed." Logan didn't respond right away, but something in his posture shifted, just slightly, like a man realizing the foundation he's been standing on isn't made of stone, but people, and one of them just reminded him what real value looks like. Logan sat down slowly, like a man carrying the weight of his own ego for the first time. The silence between them was different now, not heavy, not hostile, just full of things that finally had space to be said. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table before speaking. "You saved us from a disaster, Naomi. A real one. If that deal had gone through." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Naomi waited. Unhurried. "I meant what I said," he continued. "About the salary. You earned that money 10 times over last night, and I intend to honor it." Naomi gave a quiet nod, but didn't reach for the check. Logan leaned forward. "But I want to offer you more than a payout. I want you on our team. Permanently." She blinked, just once. "In what role?" she asked. "Director of Global Compliance," Logan said. "You'd work directly with our international legal counsel. Translate, assess risk, protect our interests before contracts ever reach the boardroom." It was a good offer. A powerful one. But Naomi didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head, watching him carefully. "I have conditions," she said. Logan nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Name them." 1. No publicity. No press releases. No announcements. My name stays off the public record. "Done," he said immediately. 2. Flexibility. I work remote when I need to. My family's overseas, and I may have to travel on short notice. "Understood." Naomi held his gaze. And 3. Logan waited. "No more jokes. No more help being the punchline in your boardroom. I don't want a title that stands alone. I want a culture that includes." That one hit. He exhaled. Slowly. "Fair. You don't fix a power imbalance with promotion," Naomi added. "You fix it by paying attention." Logan nodded again. Slower this time. "You have my word." She looked at him for a long second, then finally extended her hand. "Then we have a deal." He shook it. No fanfare. No cameras. Just 2 people, one learning how to see beyond position, the other reclaiming hers, on her own terms. 3 months later, Naomi Carter walked into a different world. Same city. Same skyline. But everything had changed. She now worked out of a quiet glass-walled office on the 39th floor of Whitaker Tower, far from the noise of reception desks and hurried assistants. Her name wasn't on the door, by choice. But inside, the desk was hers. So was the space. Clean. Minimal. Purposeful. Just like her. The walls were lined with technical reports, bilingual contracts, and reference books in English, Korean, Mandarin, and Spanish. A state-of-the-art computer sat at the center of her desk, but Naomi still preferred to take notes by hand. Pages of crisp, flowing script bound in a leather notebook she never let out of her sight. She just finished reviewing a joint venture agreement with a biotech firm in Sao Paulo, flagging 2 licensing clauses their legal team had overlooked. She didn't announce the corrections. She emailed them quietly, attached her notes, and moved on to the next project. No spotlight. No press release. Just precision. A knock at the door broke her rhythm. Logan stepped in, 2 coffees in hand. No assistant. No grand entrance. He placed one on her desk. Oat milk. 1 pump vanilla. Right. Naomi gave a small smile. "You remembered." Logan nodded, then sat across from her, setting a small folder between them. "The Singapore deal is moving forward," he said. "Your revisions saved us again." Naomi nodded. "I'm glad." Logan hesitated, then slid the folder closer. "I've got something for you. No pressure. Just take a look when you have a moment." When he left, Naomi opened the folder. Inside was a black and silver nameplate. Dr. Naomi Carter, Director of Global Compliance. Beneath it, a handwritten note. "Your name belongs on the door. Only you decide when." Naomi traced the letters with her fingertips. She didn't place the plaque on her door. Not yet. But this time, she didn't tuck it away, either. She left it on her desk, facing outward. The nameplate sat quietly on Naomi's desk for days. She didn't rush to display it. She didn't feel the need to announce a new title or declare a shift in identity. For Naomi, power didn't come from being seen. It came from choosing how and when to be seen. And now, for the first time in a long time, that choice was hers. Colleagues began to stop by, not out of curiosity but respect. Legal associates forwarded her documents for review before sending them to the board. Junior analysts sought her feedback. Nobody asked where she'd come from. They were too busy listening to what she had to say now. Naomi still took the subway. Still lived in the same two-bedroom apartment on the south side. She still called her mother every night, wired money to her sister, and kept insulin stocked in her nephew's fridge back home. The difference? She wasn't surviving anymore. She was building. At the end of each workday, Naomi would close her notebook, shut down her computer, and glance once, just once, at the nameplate. Some days, she thought about placing it on the door. Other days, she didn't. She wasn't hiding anymore. But she wasn't performing either. She didn't need the world to recognize her in order to know who she was. She had earned her seat. She had reclaimed her voice. And when the moment came to place her name on that door, she'd do it not because she had to, but because she chose to. There's a quiet power in being underestimated, but there's a greater power in knowing your worth and waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Naomi Carter's story isn't just about translation, or contracts, or corporate redemption. It's about dignity, the kind that doesn't shout to be seen, but stands tall when the world finally looks. She didn't need applause. She didn't need validation. What she needed, and what she earned, was choice. The choice to be visible. The choice to lead. The choice to rise without permission. And maybe that's the lesson we miss in our fast-paced world, where success is often confused with noise, and value is tied to visibility. How many Naomis do we pass by every day? At the office, in the break room, on the subway, in the background of our lives, quiet, capable, carrying stories we've never asked to hear. What would happen if we stopped assuming? What would change if we started listening? Because here's the truth. The smartest person in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes, they're the one filling your coffee cup, filing your reports, or holding open the door, watching, waiting, choosing their moment. And when that moment comes, they don't need to prove anything. They just remind the world who they've been all along. So now, let's turn this moment over to you. Have you ever been overlooked? Or underestimated? Or maybe, have you overlooked someone else without meaning to? Let us know in the comments. And if Naomi's story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice, like, share, subscribe. Because everyone deserves to be seen. Especially when they've spent a lifetime in the shadows.